Okay, hey, what's going on, everybody? It's me, Robert Phoenix. How are you today? See, I'm talking nice and softly, mainly because it's morning, but also perhaps we need some dulcet tones in a violent and aggressive world. Holy shit. Are we dealing with some heavy duty sun action? Or are we experiencing Mars and Libra in its in all of its socially just glory? Have you seen what happened last night in Philadelphia? I want to talk a lot about this today um, on my show, 15 Minutes of Flame, which I'm actually migrating back over to the website since the website is fixed and we can fire it back up again. I will simulcast as well over on Rumble. So that's not going to end. If you enjoyed the Rumble streams, you can still go there and hang out and participate in that. And we'll have the 15 minute side up and running today. So, just a programming note for your edification. Why don't we get into the astro weather? By the way, everybody in chat, good morning to you, or good day, or good evening. Actually, I keep reminding myself I can't say good morning, good day to you, good evening to you, and I hope everybody is navigating. This is where we are now. We're in navigation mode. We're navigating through the end times. That's what it feels like. All right, let's look at the astro. Um, I didn't like yesterday's energy. I don't know if you could tell uh, by my breakdown. And God, I mean, I mean, just when I look at the collective events that are happening right now, I'm like, what's going to happen next? I mean, you had everything from the Canadians applauding an old Ukrainian Nazi who fought against the Soviets and just being absolutely ripped and condemned for it. Justin Trudeau in tears. And then Philadelphians waking up this morning to their city, which looks like it's gone through a war. I do think we're dealing with a lot of Mars and Libra. It's coming right up on that south node. Oh man, the grievances are hot and heavy. They're coming in. They're coming in low right now, right? I mean, what else did we see yesterday? Oh man, the interview that Carrie Lake did. I'm going to talk about this today over on 15 Minutes Away today. The interview Carrie Lake did with Patrick Bet David and how she out and out lied about DeSantis. And Patrick Bet David, I'm not, he's a Libra. Um, Whatever. I'm not sure what I have to say about Patrick Bet David, except that he's got a very successful YouTube channel. He lives and works in Florida. Like that is his state. That's his state. And I can tell you that DeSantis is probably his guy, right? He makes money in the state of Florida. So Carrie Lake came in yesterday, guns blazing, and basically accused things. What she did is she accused DeSantis of doing more than he did, or actually less than he did. This is all Mars and Libra. And the reason I'm bringing this up is from a social level, you can just see the fabric starting to fray. And on the so-called truth side of things, or the truth community side of things, Mars and Libra is coming in like a hot knife and just absolutely filleting uh, these allegiances and alliances. It's really amazing to see, and I think the fissures and the fractures were always there. And what Mars and Libra is doing is it's bringing it up to the surface, and there is a feeling of self righteousness with Mars and Libra. It's not quite like Mars and Sag, where my truth is better than your truth, right? But there is that. And Mars is coming in stronger and getting closer to that square with Pluto. And I just don't see the social condition letting up anytime soon. And I'm going to get into some of this today on my show. I have a story that I'm going to cover about a North Korean war vet who was removed um, from a home to basically make way for migrants. I mean, this is only just beginning. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but this is just beginning, and we can see this with Mars and Libra, right? Like somebody who fought in a war, and is being kicked out of the place he's been living in, and it's we're going to see much more extreme measures over the next 2 weeks. We're really at a boiling point, and as Mars gets closer and closer to this south node, um, you're going to start to see people snap. Again, on the other side, we have the true node in Aries, and after witnessing what went down in Philadelphia, if you don't have, if you continue to live in that city and you do not carry a personal protection device from this point forward, don't say you weren't warned. And this is going to be the story of the next few weeks, and even as we get into once Chiron goes direct and begins to return to the 20th degree, which is the U.S. Chiron in Aries, which I've talked about. I talked about the other night. It's not going to stop, right? The whole idea here is to create. Again, this is all collectively, and we're getting a strong dose of it with Mars. The whole idea is to create as much chaos and mayhem and bedlam so that there's a huge amount of infrastructure destroyed. Don't sleep on that. They have 15-minute cities, and they have a brand new model of technology and governance that they're waiting in the wings, and they have to destroy the old stuff. And that is in large part what we're also seeing won't be feasible. We won't be able to do this. We won't be able to have this type of commerce or trade, or we won't be able to have these types of uh, storefronts or businesses. This is all part of it. We're really, and what's interesting about Libra, and I talked about this with Narco on Sunday night, is that it is the midpoint, right? It is the midpoint of the chart. So it is the augur between the collective and the personal. And so when we get into Libra and Mars and Libra, we look at these events that are very personal events, but we're not that far from elevating them to a higher position, or not really in a higher position, a position that um, makes its mark into our collective story, our national story, our international story. And the vibes aren't great here. I'm just telling you. I'm telling you, and there is going to be in probably fairly soon a visceral reaction, and then when that happens, of course, they won't do anything when the how do we say this? The reappropriation of material goods is happening, but when people decide that they're going to get involved, and clear case in point, Mars and Libra, you had a group of people on Staten Island who are they're outraged because essentially Eric Adams is shipping the migrants to Staten Island. He doesn't want them on New York. We'll throw them to Staten Island, and people on Staten Island are like, "What are you talking about? What are you talking about? We've got to deal with this now. We have no way of dealing with this. We have no infrastructure." But when you look at the footage from that, boy, the police were and it wasn't just any police, right? Because Mars rules policing. It wasn't just any police. This was like the front guard. And when you look at uh, the police force, they have ranks now. like they have their front guard, the real front guard. These are the guys that have been around for a while, but not too long, so that they're jaded and long in the tooth. But they've been around maybe 10 years, and a lot of these cops, in my opinion, a lot of them are steroid users because they're way bigger than just about everybody else, right? They'll send those guys into Staten Island to break things up. But if you watch the Philadelphia scenes from last night, what do you get? You'll get cops on bikes. Just keep that in mind. So there's tiers, and they'll deploy tiers. And so they'll deploy their bulldogs, their pit bulls, to Staten Island, right? So this is an ongoing major trend in the overall astrology. And here, if you are not seeing the patterns, you are not awake. I'm sorry, right? These are the patterns that are happening right now. And so we're tilting into these collective energies of astrology. This is where we are with Libra. So you need to pay attention. Everybody needs to pay attention with Sun conjunct Pallas. And if you're not paying attention, so what does that mean? It means that you do not go into certain places at certain times, right? We are getting to that point where we are into the third worldification of the United States and most of the first world, including Europe. And that's just for starters. This is just precautionary. This is just precautionary. There's more to this than that, right? People need to be aware of their relationship with their surroundings and their relationship with um, other people and how those other people influence their patterns of perception. That's another part of this, right? This is an interesting period where we're coming into more of that thinning, the thinning of the herd part, right? Like I hate to get into the divide and conquer stuff because obviously we're way past that, right? But you have to be very aware now, very, very aware of, and it's not just your family or your so-called friends. You just have to be aware of everybody. You can't be suspicious, but you have to be aware. Suspicion and doubt are never. I mean, they're okay in small doses. You have to have some of them, right? It's kind of like you have to have, some level of, oh, I don't know, copper in your bloodstream for your mineral content. But if you have too much copper, it's not good, right? You need to have some iron, but if you have too much iron, it's not good. So this is what we're talking about here. It's perception by degree and dose. So you've got to keep an eye out for things that you notice, right? Do not sleep on the things that you are noticing. And what's interesting here is that the sun is still in kind of a Y trine with Pluto, although that's going to begin to dissipate. And there are very powerful energies with Pluto that allow you to make changes in your life. And based on your perception and attempting to reassert some balance here, Pluto for the next week roughly will be an ally. I mean, you can focus on making changes in who you're relating with, how you're relating with them, even things like your daily routine, right? And you may want to do that. I mean, I'm serious. You may want to change your daily routine up. Don't go to work the same way every day if you're doing those sorts of things, right? And Pluto is good for that. Pluto can help cement changes that you want to make. And we've been doing this now, this Pluto dance for a while, ever since the sun went into Virgo. The next Virgoan planet that's going to come into this story is Mercury, and that's going to be a very interesting transit, especially when dealing with some of the health related stuff that seems to be kind of circling back around again. And people are much more informed now than they were 3 years ago. People are way more intelligent and up to speed on things that can actually help them versus hinder them. And not only that, but some of this Mercury Pluto trine stuff is going to really cut into the heart of the COVID story and what's happened. I guarantee you're going to see a lot more of things that have been, like, for instance, there was a FOIA, I think, that James O'Keefe got on Tony Fauci and his direct relationship with the intelligence agencies. Like, this is where we're headed with Mercury and Pluto, and Mercury trining Pluto. We were here before, right? And it went retrograde, but it's coming back again. And anybody who has any investment in things like research and trying to figure out how things work, this is a great, great transit coming up. Even if you're technologically a bit challenged, a Mercury Pluto trine is helpful, gives you some focus, it gives you the ability to stick with one thing for a while. And we're so fragmented right now. We have so many things going on in our lives, both, again, on a personal level, a lot of people just trying to hang in there and get by. And now we're seeing what's coming. Like, if you don't see what's coming right now, you when it hits, then you have no one to blame but yourself. It's kind of like the voters of Philadelphia. If you didn't see what was coming, you get what you deserve, right? So this Mercury Pluto trine should be very, very good for addressing things and sticking with things long enough so that you can apply mental energy. And when you apply mental energy, on Monday night we had Christopher Gardner on Serious Sports, and he had this one phrase that he threw out there: "Focus is power." Focus is power. And I thought to myself, that is a really good phrase. I need to remember that. And that's what you get with a Mercury Pluto trine. And it's just starting to come back. It's in that 10-degree orb. Focus is power. Now, Mercury is also in trine with Jupiter, and it's coming into a much closer trine with Uranus. So this is again, when you get into Mercury Uranus trines, you get breakthroughs, right? You see things differently, thinking outside the box. Mercury Jupiter trines, you kind of raise your, and Mercury and Virgo can be really fractal, just like Mercury and Gemini can. But the difference is that Mercury and Virgo is looking to solve a problem, right? So we have some unique problem solving potential here with Mercury. To me, the Mercury transit is the one that I'm excited about, because it's going to give us and shortly, by the way, right, three days within 3 days we're going to be back into a grand trine territory with Mercury and Pluto and Jupiter and Uranus. So using your head and being clear-headed and logical, this is the other thing with Mercury in Virgo, right? Like, here, the to me, this is all sensate, right? This is all sensate. This is body. The sun is the body. And Pallas is like, okay, I'm sensing either fear or danger or apprehension, or I need to redress certain things in my life so I can live a harmonious existence. Pluto kicks in and says, okay, well, how do I do that? How do I make that happen? So this, to me right now, I'm sorry, Mercury asked that question. Mercury is the cavalry, right? Mercury is the cavalry in the problem. And there's a window, because once Mercury starts to get to 25, 26, then we got this opposition with Neptune, and people think you're crazy, right? That's the other side of it. Oh, you're delusional. Why did you buy all that toilet paper? I'll never forget. I will never forget. Never forget. The night 310 on March 10th, actually, it's March 11th. I'd watched the NBA, and it was, I believe, a game between the Utah Jazz and the Denver Nuggets. And I saw the press conference with Rudy Gobert, and that he had theoretically tested positive for COVID. And I knew it was over. I knew the season was over. I knew where everything was going. And I got my car, and I drove to HEB at about 10:30 at night, and I stocked up on all kinds of shit. Like I don't normally do that, but I had like $500 worth of goods. I had $500 worth of goods, and including things like toilet paper and paper towels. And the next day, that's when it all began. That's when the hordes came in, right? And they went through the whole toilet paper crisis, and I was like, I'm good. Been there, right? So you have to pay attention. We're kind of coming into a time like that with this Sun Pallas conjunction. Now, remember, people think you're crazy, right? Mercury, Neptune. People think you're delusional, but stay true. Hang in there, right? Because you know what's right. You know what's right with this grand trine coming. Venus at 21, Leo, very nice conjunction with Juno. Very, very nice. Very, very nice conjunction with Juno. Be kind to your children. Be kind to your children. Be kind to your pets. I know the sixth house is related to pets, but I often think of pets as very Leo like. We treat them as our kids in many cases. They bring us great pleasure, great joy. We enter them into competitions, like AKC and stuff like that. So they're kind of at the cusp of the fifth and the sixth house, right? So we get a lot of pleasure and joy from them. And I think one of the things that uh, is interesting is we're really doing our best in a lot of ways to kind of protect the things that we love, right? With this sextile. So protect the things that you love. The sextile with Mars, whatever they are, your relationship. Look, if you know what I've noticed? I've noticed that people don't stand up for other people very often. Well, maybe that's not true. That's not true. I just haven't noticed it. I think it happens. But this is one of those sextiles, especially as Mars really comes in tighter, right? I think Venus is a little bit faster. What is it, 2108, and Mars is at 2012. Nonetheless, I think this is where loyalty comes into play with this Venus-Mars sextile, right? It's like with Leo. Leo is chivalric at times and can be heroic at times. And Mars in Libra says, "I'll stand up for that. I'll stand up for this person," or "I'll stand up against the thing that is um, being a threat to the thing that I love." Right? This is a nice sextile. So if you need to flex your loyalty today, I don't think it's a bad thing. And even with a Mars Pluto square, with some hint of danger or threat, you have to kind of go through the fear a little bit. You're good right now. It's a 7-degree orb. But as Mars conjuncts that south node and crosses over that south node, it's like crossing a Rubicon. That's what it's like. Like when Mars crosses that south node, it is crossing a Rubicon. And now we're into um, much more intense and potentially even dangerous territory. I'm not kidding. I'm not trying to be hyperbolic, but from what I'm seeing and the energies that are out there, and not just in places like Philadelphia, but on Twitter, I mean, it is going to get hot and heavy, boys and girls. So once Mars hits that 25th degree and crosses that Rubicon, look out. So now you want to, at that point, do you want to stand up for people? Look, you can, right? You can, but this is a nice bridge for loyalty and letting other people know that you have their back. Um, the Venus square here is like not enough. Like again, we talked about this last week, like wringing the last few drops out of summer. That's what this is like. You know, I want to have some fun. I want to go to the beach. I want to do something. I want to get away, right? I want to get away. I need to get away before the sun. The days are shorter and they're colder, and we're looking at the prospect of Venus and Virgo, which is business oriented, like taking care of things. In some ways, even perhaps cleaning up the mess of the fun, right? So this is, and the downside with this is like fun at any cost. It's like I just want to have. I don't care about my responsibilities or how this is going to affect another person. And that's not really you. A lot of you guys are, I would say the absolute majority of you are as conscious as you can be. I think you all work on it. But this could be other people that would be less conscious. Like, hey, can you watch the kids for a week? The kids being like your sister's kids. Can you watch the kids for a week? Mike and I want to go to the Keys for a week, right? It's like, what? You get to have fun and just sprung on you. Things like there's a lot of springing with this Venus Uranus square. And even in relationships that are stable, this Venus Uranus square can be very springy. Like, oh, what happened? Oh, this just happened. What do I do? How do I deal with it? Right. So, in as much as we have this loyalty, there's also tests with Venus Uranus. Very disruptive. Very disruptive. Um, the other thing too, it's like when we get into Venus and Leo, again, it's these things we hold near and dear to our hearts. And with that Uranus square, it's shattering. It's absolutely shattering. I'll talk more about that on 15 Minutes of Flame when it comes to Philadelphia. We talked yesterday about the Moon Saturn conjunction, and the Moon is cross Saturn. Right? And again, like last night, the Moon and Saturn work, and it was lunacy. It was lunacy on the streets of Philadelphia. If people are going to go in there today and they're going to try to restore some degree and level of order, good luck. Good luck. Right? This is, and a lot of this is planned. Again, I'll get into more of that later. But the Moon Saturn conjunction is very sobering. This is what people are waking up to. This is what they're waking. It's a very sobering kind of conjunction, and not necessarily fun, but I think there are There's long-term potential here with the Moon Saturn conjunction, right? Like if this is a day where you wanted to deal with some of your habituations, Moon Saturn conjunction is kind of like it's the morning after, it's the wake up call. It's like, I need to stop doing this, right? I need to stop doing this and implementing something that is actually a bit more emotionally healthy on some level. And the inconjunct here with the sun and the moon is brief. The sun and Saturn is just kind of ending, right? So we have this kind of interesting inconjunct going on. And this sobering moment, right? The sobering realization that things are not what they seem. And sort of these incoming, both social and personal patterns. It's like a wake up call. This is not a fun aspect. I can tell you that right now, but it's an essential aspect. This is like Brussels sprouts before Brussels sprouts. You know what they did with Brussels sprouts? They started to grow them differently. They made them less bitter. Because when I was a kid, I had a gag reflex with Brussels sprouts. So they made them less bitter. They started to pan roast them and demi-glaze them with balsamic vinegar. Like they turned Brussels sprouts into crack. That's what they did. They turned Brussels sprouts into crack. Before, Brussels sprouts were not a vegetable you wanted. The steamed Brussels sprouts, to me, they were disgusting. Some of you might like them. But, they're like essential, right? They're like essential, or they were, or broccoli, deemed essential if you're into the veg world, right? This is that vegetable. You don't like it, but you know you need it. You don't like it, but you know you need it. And then you have to deal with it. And also there is a bit of alienation with this inconjunct. The things that you could count on that seem familiar, they're not quite there today, right? You're sort of having hugs with ghosts. They're not quite there today, which will force people to reevaluate a lot of things. This is a big reevaluation day. But again, it's all setting the stage for Mercury coming in, where you can make very powerful, well thought out, logical, rational changes to your life. So hang in there. There is, I think, a high degree of chaos. And once Mars crosses that south node or hits that south node, it's going to get even more intense. So batten down the hatches and fortify the bunkers. There you go. Okay. I have a new thing. It's in the description of the show. So I've been doing this for about, I think I started in, when did I start? I think I started in January, December. I might have started in December. It's been a while. I went through and started to look at all the old, not all like individually, but I saw a number of the previous Astro Weather. So we've been doing this for a while. Anyway, I set up a buy me a coffee link, right? That's what I did. So in the show description, in the show notes, right below where this is playing, if you'd like to buy me a cup of coffee or whatever, feel free to do that. I am not monetized on YouTube. I can't get super chats. I was basically banned from YouTube a long time ago. Long time before it was in vogue to get demonetized. I was demonetized. So that's a way if you want to support this show without getting a reading or a personal service, you can do that. And thank you if you do. Let's see, what do we got here? It's our star of the day. Very interesting star of the day. Some of you may be aware of them. Some of you may not be aware of them. It is Irvine Welsh. And Irvine Welsh was the author of the book Train Spotting. And train spotting is it's a term for watching a DJ and trying to figure out what records the DJ is playing. It's called train spotting. And Irvine Welsh is a byproduct. He was born in Edinburgh, and he was a kind of an interesting outsider, is how I would describe him, and very much connected to drugs, and music and nightlife. So the whole train spotting term comes from that world, vernacular, and culture. And one of the things in the book and the movie, where Ewan McGregor plays Irvine Welsh, one of the things that's very apparent in the movie is the relationship with drugs. And in the case of train spotting, it's heroin. And heroin is one of the main characters of the film, besides Ewan McGregor. It's a great movie. It's a very funny movie. There are parts of the movie that will absolutely shatter your heart. And a lot of the stories that are in the movie come from Irvine Welsh's life. And so we have a Sagittarius rising at 28 degrees in his chart right over here. And Sagittarius, for me, the motto of Sagittarius is anything worth doing is worth overdoing, right? So you get this on the ascendant. But really the keys to Irvine Welsh's chart, he's written a number of other books, and a lot of them are still in that same territory. He wrote another book called Acid House, which talks about the connection between dance music and MDMA and LSD and that scene, and even how in many ways that was incredibly addictive. And so Irvine Welsh, you can see on the midheaven, right? He's got his true node in Scorpio, Venus in Scorpio, Moon in Scorpio. Like, this is all about the taboo. He is not afraid of exposing and emotionally portraying what that world is like. And by and large, he is an observer, right? Like he is, he's and again, you can see the excess. Jupiter conjunction with the sun, 6 degrees. Mars Sun conjunction in Libra, right? So this is all eighth house stuff. This is underground territory. That's the world he lives in. Irvine Welsh lives in the underground, and he's not afraid of it. He's clearly not afraid of it. And his Mercury in Virgo is the recorder, right? It is the recorder of all of these events and all of these stories that permeate his life. I would say in some ways, he's kind of like a modern day version of William Burroughs, because Burroughs was that same kind of experiencer, right? Where he would indulge in heroin, or he would indulge in yage, or any number of drugs for a while. And then he would use them as sort of this interface between his reality and these kind of hyper realities. Irvine Welsh is really not that much different than William S. Burroughs. And, there's a lot going on here. And you've got Pluto here. It's right on Regulus. It's at 1 Virgo. So Pluto's in the 8th house. And Pluto is the anchor, right? This guy can just dwell here in the 8th house. And I think with Sun and Mars and Jupiter, again, Libra playing the role of the mediator, right? And the mediation between the Virgo material, which is sharp, and collecting all these stories and collecting these tales, these sordid and grimy tales of alienation, drug abuse, humor, even friendship and camaraderie. I mean, one of the things that comes through in train spotting is the friendship and the camaraderie that these users have, right? And to me, this is very Jupiter, Sun, Mars in Libra, but it all has to come out somewhere. So where does it come out? Mercury, like Mercury sextiles all these planets. So, he's essentially living it and recording it and then giving it to the rest of the world, right? And he's also being recognized for it. He's been accused of glamorizing drugs and illicit behavior, and I don't necessarily think that's true. I think what Welsh is trying to do is he's trying to get to some degree of the truth, actually, in all of its um, warts. And there are interesting stories inside of train spotting. Where you do encounter things like loyalty, where you do encounter things like somebody, the Ewan McGregor Irvine Welsh character turns his life around, goes clean, right? And that's the scorpionic transformation. So he's a very interesting character in terms of like who he is. No, and I would say very few people know. They know his work, right? And most of his work tends to be fictional, but they don't really know who he is, and that's probably really okay with him. There are some squares involved, right? Like Saturn Pluto square, in dealing with the legal ramifications of addictions. I mean, that's a big part of it, and dealing with the sociological and even religious ramification of addiction. And I can tell you right now, the guy, has struggled with that a bit, right? Like his, religious upbringing squaring off against Pluto, and basically saying, "Fuck that shite." I'm going to do things that are not going to be sanctioned by the church or even by society in a lot of ways. He doesn't have a lot of friends. This is a guy that does not have a lot of friends. The ones he does have are probably very loyal to him, but he doesn't need a lot of friends. When you have this conglomeration of planets in the 8th house, friends are the least of your worries, right? What you're into is you're into going beneath the surface of things. And with Mars, kind of that fearless, um, in some ways very restless drive to kind of hit bottom. I mean, that's the other thing, right? And his character in Train Spotting fucking hits bottom hard. Ewan McGregor's character hits bottom hard in Train Spotting. The other thing that's really interesting is there's a scene which by the way, comes right out of his book, where he cannot find heroin, and so he scores a suppository, right, a morphine suppository, and he goes into this, and he's like really, um, he's really jonesing, right? So he goes into this grimy pub, he goes into this horrible restroom, right, and he sticks the suppository uh, up his ass, right? That's all eighth house stuff, and it's all very Virgo in a lot of ways, right? It's kind of anal, literally anal, like, but it's also very kind of obsessed and possessive with Pluto, right? It's very Plutonian, and he starts all of a sudden, his withdrawal symptoms begin to ebb, right? But then what happens is that um, it creates like this insane bowel movement. This is all a true story, and to me, this is all the taboo stuff, right? And in the movie, the scene I think is honestly portrayed up until one point, right? And in the movie, he um, shits out the suppository, and he's so desperate. And when you look at this uh, toilet he's sitting on, it's gruesome, and he has to literally he died. This is again a metaphor. I don't know to the degree that he had to stick his hands in this steaming pile of his own, excrement. But he has in the movie he has to dive into the toilet, and in the movie, Danny, what's his name, the director, turns the scene into something weirdly beautiful. It's very bizarre. Like he goes into the toilet, and then they start playing Brian Eno and Daniel Lanois, and it's like he finds this thing and he looks up, and it's like he's in sort of looking up from the Sargasso Sea or something. It's beautiful, right? And for a minute you're just transfixed, but that's his like moment where he's regained nirvana, and then he comes out of the toilet and he's like stinking of shite, right? But he got the suppository and put it back in. This is all eighth house stuff. That's all eighth house, and the degrees with which he would go to in order to do something like that, and then write about it, right? Then write about it. And Uranus here at 10 Leo conjunct his vertex, he's going to talk about stuff that's just crazy, right? And squaring Venus and squaring the moon, and it's going to disrupt people. It's going to disrupt their social conventions. This is all on display up here. What you see with Irvine Welsh is what you get. I think a relationship would be very difficult for this guy, right? Very, very difficult. You literally, if you were in a relationship with him, you'd be in a relationship with all of his scorpionic tendencies, and that includes his obsession with drugs or his obsession with the extreme in a lot of ways. Anyway, there's your star of the day, Irvine Welsh, the author of Train Spotting and Acid House. Okay, I got to get out of here. 43 minutes. Wow, a long Astro Weather. I got to go do another show. Don't forget my good friend Chris over at True Hemp Science. You don't want to use his gummies as a suppository, right? You want to chew the gummies. And the gummies are great. The sleep gummies are the best. Had one last night, worked like a charm. Boom, boom, out go the lights. And there's a whole host of other products there for your health. And listen, we all have our little prepper stuff. You should have CBD in your prep kit. You should have a good supply of high quality CBD for your prep kit. And Chris has some salves over there that'll be really good for you. So check out truehempscience.com. And when you type in 15MINS, you will get free product that goes along with your $100 order or more, right? So free goodies, always good. $150 get you free shipping and 30-day money-back guarantee. Join us over on 15 Minutes of Flame. That's where I'm going to be today. I got to go. I got to program the show, and hopefully the code that they gave me to stick in the Zoom stuff works, and we will go on without a hitch. Go on without a hitch? It doesn't go off without a hitch. Why does it go off without a hitch? I think it should go on without a hitch. It's like funny language, isn't it? All right, take care. Thanks for being here. This is your Astro Weather. Use your head in order to discern what's real. Your heart said what's possible. By the way, be good to each other. Be good to each other. We need a little bit more real goodness in the world. Be good to each other. And if you can't be good, or a person isn't going to let you, let it go, because somebody else will. All right, take care. Bye for now.